Welcome to the Davos in the Desert podcast series. These podcasts feature thought leaders in business and public policy. Our intent is to be informative and thought-provoking. This session is part of Davos in the Desert's Data Center Cooling Technologies Conference. Our guests, Dr. Seri Lee and James Lim, introduce us to KoolLogix, a Singapore-based data center cooling technologies company. Dr. Lee is co-founder and chief technology officer, while James Lim is head of strategy and international business development. Without further ado, here is Davos in the Desert CEO and podcast host David Waintick.
So I'm here with two gentlemen from KoolLogix. KoolLogix System is an award-winning data center thermal management solution that delivers improved energy efficiency and lower carbon emissions. Here with Dr. Seri Lee, who is the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of KoolLogix. Also here with James Lim, who is the Head of Strategy and International Business Development. So great to have you gentlemen with us.
Well, thank you, David, for inviting us.
Happy to be here.
So Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, recently was quoted as saying that he thinks demand for data centers will double in the next 5 years. So a lot of growth in data centers. But one of the issues that data centers have, I understand, is they produce so much heat. And I believe KoolLogix has a technology to reduce the heat in a data center. So maybe you can explain a little bit in sort of layman's terms. We don't have to get too technical. But
Sure.
how does KoolLogix help data centers reduce heat?
Okay. Well, to be honest with you, the word of reducing heat is not what we do, actually. Okay. We remove heat efficiently from the data center. What happens when you do the computation of any of electronic equipment? They use electrical power. Okay. And believe it or not, energy based on energy conservation, the energy has to be conserved. Okay. That you cannot destroy or create new energy in the universe. So the bottom line is that all the electrical power or energy went into electronics, 100% converts to heat. So when the computer devices get heat up, just like human beings, if it's too hot, you can work efficiently. So the devices will slow down. Not only that, it may fail, even just go to sleep. And so the problem is removing heat by lowering the temperature is a key point. Okay, so the KoolLogix start that job more efficiently than any other competing technologies that we know of, and most cost-effective way. The reason how and why it does most efficiently is that it uses what is called thermal siphon. That's a technical word, but in nature we see that everywhere. Thermal siphon is really a fancy word of what happens in the nature. And one example is a water cycle that everybody knows. The water cycle simply explained by the solar heat, the sun heat comes onto the ground, it evaporates water, and the vapor water goes up and the condensed and it become a cloud. And once it's thick enough, it'll fall down as rain. And that water cycle goes around. Now think about this. In this nature, we don't have a pump. You don't see any pump or compressors doing the work. No electrical power. But what is driving this cycle, which converts heat into the upper atmosphere, transfers the heat around, is driven by the sun, the heat coming from the sun, right? And that circulates the whole thing by the gravity, which is ubiquitous around the world anyway. So that's exactly what we do. We just enclose that cycle into a closed loop and becomes our product. So where is the heat coming from? The servers, the electronic devices. They generate a lot of heat. That's the problem nowadays, right? Data centers consume 10 to 15% of the total energy in typical countries like Singapore and America and so on and so forth. All that energy is going to convert into heat, and essentially and that heat is actually waste heat if you do it right? You have to remove it and throw away. And we, in fact, remove and throw away ultimately, but in the past, we use that energy, heat energy, to drive the thermosiphon system in our KoolLogix without requiring any additional input power, for example, electricity. So essentially, the circulation of and the removal of the heat comes as a free to our system. Okay, that's what it makes our KoolLogix product the most efficient system. Contrary to our system, other products usually use compressors, air conditioning systems, and so on and so forth, which requires electrical power in addition to computing power. Okay? So that's the essence of our technology, that we reduce the amount of energy that we need to use to remove the heat. So as compared to other technologies, and that's what makes our KoolLogix product most efficient mechanism I can think of.
Okay, so you have no mechanical pump or compressor that accomplishes that. Okay.
No.
And is there an impact on near rack water damage risk? Do you reduce water damage risk with your technology?
Okay, good. That's a good question. Now, this circulation that I just mentioned, talked about, okay, although I compare the system as a water system, water cycle in nature, what we use in the computing in our system is a refrigerant, okay, which evaporates at lower temperature, okay, because water only boils 100 degrees C, and we cannot have that in our system. So we actually use a dielectric refrigerant liquid. Dielectric means it's not electrically conductive. So if any damage ever happens and the refrigerant leaks, it'll evaporate and it's not electrically conductive, meaning that there will be zero damage to the electronic devices. Okay? Now, we do use water we call it gray zone, away from the computing devices, okay, to ultimately remove the heat, but that water is a distance away, typically, a safe distance away from the electronic devices, in such a way that even that water system gets to be failed, just like your plumbing system in your kitchen could fail time to time. But yes, it rarely happens. But if in case it happens, it's away from the devices, and the electronic devices are protected. In addition to that, we also have a redundant system everywhere, just like any other, airplane designs and the critical designs. So anything fails, it can be replaced with maintenance systems and the replacement schemes within time before any electronic devices gets damaged. Even have no chance to shut down. A continuous operation is maintained and guaranteed.
Okay. And on the topic of water, does the KoolLogix system also optimize chilled water use?
At this point, yes. In a sense, we don't actually directly control. Okay, the KoolLogix system itself does not include the chilled water system. We assume at this point, okay, chilled water system is provided by the infrastructure, and we go from there. But in terms of the design, efficiency of a KoolLogix, we can design and change the parameters in such a way that we can accommodate different chilled water temperatures, which becomes a very critical issue these days. As you're aware and can imagine, chilled water costs money to make cold water, right? So what industry trend right now is to increase the chilled water temperature, and to the point that it's not cold anymore. We call it processed water. Instead of us using chilled water to mislead anybody, we use processed water, which has a temperature around the tapped water temperature in the typical household environment, and that will make the entire system much more efficient. Yes, we have to be careful about performance requirement and the limitations and so on, but our system can accommodate different chilled water, so-called chilled water or processed water temperature as well.
Okay. And then what is the system that you provide your clients? What does it look like? And where does it get installed?
Oh.
Where is it applied in the data center?
Okay, good. Okay, so our KoolLogix system at higher level is you can categorize it as a rear door heat exchanger.
Rear door heat
exchanger, and the people who are familiar with this industry knows what that is, right? So it's attached to the back of the servers. Okay, entire back surface is covered by our KoolLogix system, from which heat is removed directly from the hot air coming off the servers. Okay, so within the rack, we have servers that dissipate a lot of heat, make air really hot, and that air, before it escapes the rack system, is captured by KoolLogix. And then heat from that hot air is removed directly from the backside of the racks. So after that, the air comes out as cold again. So it's the same temperature as the inlet air temperature. So the air goes in from the room. Okay, let me repeat again. Air goes into the rack from the room as typically 20, 22, 24, 26 degrees Celsius, just room air temperature. And as it passes through the servers, it picks up all that heat. Typically, we design for 20 kilowatts per rack. Okay, 20 kilowatts per rack. So it picks up 20 kilowatts of energy or heat. And the end point is that the air gets to be hot. Typically, it can get to around 40, 45 degrees Celsius. Okay, so from 25 to, let's say, 45 degrees Celsius. So air is heated. That hot air, quite warm and hot, will be captured by the KoolLogix system at the rear door. And heat is removed, so it comes back out as a 25 degrees Celsius. So if you stand back and look at it, as usual, servers will make a lot of noise from the server fans and so on. Cold air goes in, cold air comes out. To mundane people, there's nothing happened essentially. That's the beauty of it as well. Now, another key point is that the rear door is easily opened as usual for maintenance purposes. At the same time, because it is attached to each rack, behind the rack, it does not occupy or waste any real estate, which is the critical, valuable asset for the operators, right? So we don't need any extra space, like in-row cooling systems. They actually install separate aircon system basically in between the racks. So the rack space taken by the in-row cooling system is gone. So you have less real estate area to be able to generate more revenue. We don't have that problem.
If you were able to install the rear door technology you offer at the server OEM level, would they be able to remove fans because they wouldn't have to cool as much?
I see. So essentially what I'm visualizing when you said OEM system is that why can't we have that KoolLogix system or technology right behind the servers? That's what I want to understand, instead of it behind the racks.
Okay? Well, maybe I'm not understanding this correctly, but the question is, could you go to a manufacturer of a server and put the technology at the factory level when they're manufacturing the server? And if so, would that reduce the need for a fan?
Okay, I understand that. I understand perfectly. Essentially, so we are talking about the same thing in different way. Okay, so and the point is that we have a KoolLogix system behind each server, and the product is the same thing. Instead of behind the rack, we can install KoolLogix system behind each server. Okay, especially with the upcoming of AI systems, NVIDIA devices and so on. They're quite thick. 8Us and so on, right? And the very heavy and so on. So we can actually modularize our KoolLogix system behind each servers as well. Technically possible, but we're not honestly considering that seriously yet, because there's a pros and cons, and the cons from the business perspective and the implementation and the maintenance perspective, it's a little more complicated than one might think. So, yeah.
So James, Does your system work equally as well if you install it when a data center is being constructed, as it, or if you add your KoolLogix system as a retrofit to an existing data center?
Okay, both ways.
Probably.
Yeah.
You want to go? Hey.
You want to add something? Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, James, maybe.
Yeah, sure. I mean, actually, our system has been retrofitted into a live data center, and it also has been applied to a data center which was new. So in both cases, it has been done. I think more interestingly would be the case of the live data center that we installed, because it was done over about 6 months, and we retrofitted our systems into the data center without any downtime at all. Yeah. So what's interesting also was that it was using traditional cooling methods in the data center, where the rack density was quite low. It was below 10. So after we retrofitted our system, it increased the rack density by about 3 times, and this was all done with 0 downtime. So yeah, to answer the question, it can be used in brownfield sites as well as also new sites.
Okay.
Beautifully described.
And as far as the addressable market, are there any types of data centers that are not appropriate for your technology?
I would say that right now, we don't really look at the hyperscalers, but in terms of enterprise customers and also potentially co-location players, these are the type of data centers that we can look at. I think so far right now, mainly will be enterprise customers who have their own data centers that we're looking at. Especially like the example I mentioned earlier, some of these data centers, they have reached a point where they want to increase the rack density, but because of constraints such as physical constraints, by using our technology, they are able to increase the yield, the rack density of these servers, and at the same time, they can also save on electricity and energy use.
Okay, great. And how do you price the product? Is it per panel, or how do you quote a customer what the cost will be to implement?
I can't give you an exact number right now, but in general, our systems cost a bit more than your traditional type of cooling in a data center. But because the value that we bring to our customers is that there is quite a lot of cost savings involved. So if you look at that, the cost savings actually can help to pay for the increase, the premium that we have for our technology. So again, in the example like I mentioned earlier, because there was quite a significant savings in terms of energy usage, it was about around 75% compared to what they had previously. Translated into monetary terms, it can't go into too much detail, but it was 6 figures in Singapore dollars. That's what they save per month. And therefore, the ROI on that investment was less than 2 years.
Great. Okay. And what benefits does the KoolLogix system offer in terms of reduced carbon emission? Is there a way to measure, the ESG aspect of it?
Okay, let me start a little bit. Okay, carbon emission is measured by the amount of electricity that's been used. It's a scalable. Okay? In order to generate electricity to be used, there's no way you can generate electricity without generating carbon. So there's a scaling factors actually. In fact, you can translate the savings in electricity directly to reduction in carbon emission. Okay, so we save electricity. One might have to use to remove the heat from the servers by as much as 50 to 75%, depending on the situation and cases. So the carbon reduction can also be reduced. We can say that carbon reduction can also be reduced by a factor of 50 to 75%. James, you want to add anything?
No, that's good.
By the way, David, you're going to edit this, right?
No, probably not. But
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, so
but,
this is live then.
yeah. Okay. And what type of, so does KoolLogix install its systems itself, or do you use contractors in the different markets to do the actual installation? And then what kind of ongoing support is needed, or if any? Do you have to do any maintenance?
Okay, James, kick in.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, so a couple questions. Does
Yeah.
KoolLogix install its systems itself, or do you use
Right.
a network of third parties that do the installation? And then
Yeah.
secondly, after the installation is complete, to what extent is maintenance needed to keep the technology
Maybe
running?
I'll answer the first part, and then maybe Prof. Lee can answer the second part about maintenance.
Mhm.
But in general, we will install the systems, but we can also work with partners to help us with the installation. So not all of it is done by us. It can also be to outsource to partners as well. So we have a mixture of both. So we are able to do that. And then actually, so after we install, there'll be a testing and commissioning, and after that, usually I think it's about the first year, we will do regular maintenance, and after that, depending on what the clients want, there will be a maintenance contract that they can that we will discuss. Yeah.
Yeah. So the maintenance contract actually includes checking the fan performance and any leaks, which I don't think it ever happened in our product life of 3 to 5 years now. But we always check all those things as usual. It's an annualized contract. And I believe every one of the projects we have done so far, there's a little bit of including pipe, the ones that we are working on today, that we have installed and deployed more than 12 projects so far in the past 3 to 4 years, which is actually, honestly, it's an astonishing accomplishment as a technology company introducing so-called new technologies for removing heat. Gets to be actually, we are growing faster than we actually anticipated.
To what extent is the KoolLogix system off the shelf versus having to do customization for various clients? Or is it even at a point where you can just send the materials, just send the panels, the rear doors to the customer and they can install it? Is that something that could happen in the future, maybe?
Oh, right. That's a good thing. The rear door heat exchanger we produce as a partial component, which is one of the major components of our KoolLogix entire system, is actually modularized. It's a same heat exchanger, okay? But customization per project has to come in because of the layout of the pipelines, because all those rear door heat exchangers, typically 20, 30, 40 of them, depending on the size of the data center hall that you're working on, has to be connected into the system where the condensation happens away from the system and so forth. So there's a so-called plumbing layout has to be done. So that is definitely customized. Okay, so that cannot be modularized or available as a product to be installed by the customers. But the modules themselves, yes, it can be module. Individual customers can actually buy them if as necessary for upgrading or retrofit in once the layout system is completed.
Okay. So KoolLogix is based in Singapore. Are there any subsidies that the Singaporean government is providing KoolLogix, or any government benefits that you're receiving? No.
Not that I'm aware of. Are you aware of anything, James? Of course, the Singapore government
Okay, I would
begin.
because maybe some background, right? Is that this KoolLogix, I mean, it is a spin-off from another company called ERS that was also in the data center industry, but that was manufacturing of server racks. So about 10 years ago, ERS they started work with A-Star and also Enterprise Singapore. And that's how we came up with this technology. So from then until now, there has been support from the Singapore government in terms of our engagement with A-Star and also Enterprise Singapore. There have been some subsidies that have helped the company. So, for example, we have expanded to Indonesia last year. We have an office in Jakarta, and also we set up a user experience center. So there have been certain grants from the government, from Enterprise Singapore. There's one called the MRA, Market Readiness Access Grant. So that will help to defray some of the costs involved for overseas expansion. I mean, this is not the it's a substantial amount, but yeah. So we have had support from the Singapore government to help with our expansion.
I'm sorry, I maybe misunderstood the original nature of the question. Yes, there are subsidies, especially during the operational as well as the R&D stage. So technology development, working closely with the A-Star, which is a research institution in Singapore, the government institution. Yes, we are deeply and largely involved with the A-Star investigations and the government subsidies through Enterprise Singapore and so on. But when I said that, not that I'm aware of, is that the actual, once the product is finished and launched and commercialized, we're on our own, and we are quite successful.
I understand that Singapore's National Supercomputing Center adopted the KoolLogix solution. That seems like a very important thing. I would imagine their standards and expectations are very, very high. And then they chose KoolLogix, right?
Right. Okay, let me start off, James. I'm sure you're going to add us a little bit more. Yeah, national supercomputers. We have that's one of the first, not the first, but one of the first major customers with the highest recognitions you can imagine. So when we actually got awarded with that project, it was just a relief of all the not anxiety, but the accomplishment, if you will. So that recognition and continuing collaboration with the NSCC has been a foundation of our launching pad, if you will, that we had a much easier way to invite and accomplish following projects, including major bank institutions in Singapore and the major data centers in Singapore and so on, and which now we are expanding into Indonesia and Malaysia and the Vietnam markets at the moment.
Okay. Are those markets are those markets growing because local companies are building data centers in Vietnam and Indonesia, or are some of the big players also putting data centers, Google and Amazon and Microsoft? Are they also putting data centers in Vietnam and Indonesia, in places like that, or is it local people that are establishing the data centers in those countries?
James, your part.
I think it's actually a mixture of both. I mean, the data center industry is just booming, right? In especially Asia Pacific. So what we're seeing in Asia, I think just demographics, is so many people in Indonesia, right? And then so we see the trend. It's still going to be going. It's still going to be booming. There's going to be insatiable demand. So yes, the usual guys like Google, Meta are all here. But I would say that also companies or enterprises that will have to have their own data centers, that is also increasing, especially with what we are seeing with AI. So it could be that it is another engine of growth, whereby there could be a secondary market or a market that is being pushed by this AI. So I think there are many statistics out there, but I read one that said that AI workloads in data centers is going to increase by about 3 to 4 times in the next 5 years. So that will really bring up the rack density in data centers, and that is going to be another new sector where I think what NVIDIA coins AI factories. That is going to be interesting. And in terms of what we are doing on the research side, product development and all that, we are also looking at that very closely and working towards capturing that market.
Okay. So Dr. Lee, I believe you have 18 patents. How many of those patents are assigned to or owned by KoolLogix?
All of them.
All of them, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a big patent portfolio.
And we have a few more ideas in the pipelines and the still ongoing patents in the line.
Okay, great. And then James, as far as going to other markets, is it you and your team that are developing those markets, or do you have collaborations with the likes of Accenture or Deloitte or somebody like that?
Yeah, so far all our projects are in Singapore. We made the decision to go to Indonesia last year because we see lots of potential over there. So we have some partnerships in Indonesia right now in terms of our go-to-market strategy. But besides that, we are also looking to find strategic partners in the markets that we're expanding to. So in terms of in Asia, we're looking at ASEAN in general, and also where opportunity takes us. So it could be somewhere like in Korea or Japan. But all these are all in the works, and we are always looking to work with partners to go to these markets, because these are the partners that will understand local regulations and customs, and that is the way we want to approach our expansion plan.
I would imagine there's some kind of cachet with being a Singaporean company when you go to Indonesia or Vietnam, because the legal system is so strong in Singapore and the contracts are so credible and so forth. It's like in the United States, as maybe South Americans would prefer to do the contracting with the United States, even though the service is rendered by a local. So maybe it's sort of the same paradigm in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, so I think that's why we have to work with local partners who understand what it is really like at the ground level. Therefore, we are looking for that. These are things that we plan to do this year in our expansion plans. Identifying growth opportunities and with the correct partners is really the focus of our plans to expand internationally.
In fact, local clients demand that to happen. They want us to have local partners established with them and work closely with them. And it is to our advantage because, as you mentioned, we are a Singaporean company, and honestly, we as a company don't have that experience or capacity to deal with the clients in the foreign countries anyway. And it's the best way to handle the business, future business, by having the partnership with a local entity.
Okay, and maybe one of the last questions I have, the actual manufacturing of your product, does KoolLogix manufacture the product itself, or do you outsource the manufacturing?
Okay, we do all the engineering and marketing and so on. The actual hardware, of course, is not manufactured in Singapore, as you can imagine. So we subcontract basically.
Okay.
But all the engineering and marketing and the human resources, all the background work and the foundation is operated within Singapore. Okay,
great. Maybe you can think about any final words you want to say. I'll just let our listeners know. KoolLogix has a nice website. The website is KoolLogix.com and it's spelled KoolLogix. And the email is hello@KoolLogix.com. So you can write to James and you can write to to Seri Lee and the other team members. If you have further questions or if you have ideas for partnerships or want more information. Okay, any final words? Maybe we'll ask James and then Seri. Anything else we think we should know about KoolLogix?
Yeah, sure. I think, well, I'm proud to announce that in December 2023, we just completed pre-Series A funding of $8 million. So this is really going to be helpful for our expansion plans. It was not easy to get that in the high interest rate environment last year. So we really see it as a validation, of our technology and in the market's recognition of our management and of our company. So I'm really excited to say that, with this, we are really poised for growth this year. And then, yeah.
Great, thank you.
So honestly, I've been working in this particular industry and the expertise in electronics cooling for the past about 35 years, even before the personal computer came out. So I have seen this industry growth and what's happening, so-called the high-tech industry. So when I joined this KoolLogix and developed this product, I thought our launching runway had to be at least 5 years before we actually be able to see anything happening. Now we are 5 years old company now. We have about over a dozen projects already deployed successfully, beginning with the National Supercomputer Computing Center. So with this incoming of our first successful A-series funding, we are now prepared and we are now paving the runway to go into the next stage of our expansion and development, meaning entertaining AI industry. And it's going to be a lot of fun for me.
Yeah. Well, it must be nice to see all your hard work paying off now. Seems like you're at a very exciting time in the company's growth trajectory.
Yes.
Okay.
Very much.
Well, great. So I'd like to thank James Lim and Dr. Seri Lee from KoolLogix. It was a great interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Okay.
David.
Thank you, David.